There were many legends throughout the galaxy, but none were as terrifying as the galactic lion beast. Stories about its potency spread like wildfire across star systems because it is unadulterated. The strongest warriors might be brought to their knees by its stare, which they said could rip apart space-time itself. Even the most courageous hunters avoided approaching it because the cosmic lion was a. Few people had seen this mythical beast, which was a representation of unbridled cosmic might, and even Sergeant Jack Ryland was not influenced by the mythology he had battled, even though fewer had survived the confrontation. Across the stars, he faced foes that made even the most valiant men shudder. He was renowned for his. Jack was brave, but more so because he was able to look beyond his fear to the reality that lay underlying it. He had heard the tales, and he saw a chance to probe where others saw just fear. Because it had been 2 weeks before even the most bizarre legends could be comprehended. The encrypted transmission from the distant moon of Theos was caught by Jack, but it wasn't. The signature was the only indication that drew his attention. The message was somewhat jumbled, yet Jack saw right away that he had discovered the unmistakable cosmic lion. Had to leave after his ship's explorers penetrated Theos' atmosphere. Jack's eyes furrowed as he scanned the bleak, frozen terrain of Theos, which was a lonely place. The planet's surface was a patchwork of rocky ice formations and a dark cavern when it was born in the dim light of twin moons. Jack pulled the ship down because it was the ideal hiding spot for a monster that existed more in fiction than actuality. The cold struck him instantly as he carefully landed it in a broad clearing blanketed with snow. As he adjusted his equipment and checked the universal, he went outside and savored the fog of his breath. It was just a prototype, but the translator tied to his wrist was. Jack didn't need to be informed that this was his greatest opportunity to communicate with something that no one had ever dared approach. If the legends were accurate, the cosmic lion was more than simply a beast. It was a monster created by the stars themselves, a force of nature that roamed the galaxy fearlessly and freely. However, Jack wasn't here to resist it. Rather, he was here to comprehend it and to do what no one else could. Moved farther into the frigid wilderness, his boots crunching with each step. His pulse was racing, but it wasn't from fear. Rather, it was from the excitement of the. Somewhere in the distance, he heard the anticipation of what was to come. A deep grumble that sounds like the tectonic plates moving under the. Jack stopped as the lion approached the surface, his breath stopping in his throat. A harsh snarl that seemed to resonate reverberated through the chilly caverns. Jack's pulse accelerated as he walked gingerly in the air surrounding him. The sound in the direction of a massive rock and ice mountain that jutted up into the sky. The whole moon felt as the wind howled through the cracks, producing a symphony of roars and whispers. As Jack got closer to the opening of a shadowy cavern, it seemed to be breathing in time with the monster it contained. He sensed the cosmic lion's undeniable presence before he ever saw it. Beast, his instinct shouted as the air seemed to become thicker and the colder. And to back down and hide before the tale came to pass, but Jack was different from the others in that he addressed fear rather than avoiding it. He entered the enormous cavern, which had a roof that was obscured by shadows. Only the faint glimmer of far-off stardust, which whirled around the cave walls like constellations, provided illumination to life, and the cosmic body lay in the middle of the room. Jack had never seen a lion like this one before. It was huge. Under a layer of ethereal shifting fur that seemed to glow in the light of faraway stars, the body was rippling with muscles. Stars were more than simply hair. They resembled a nebula that was sparkling and twirling. Each strand's eyes are as black as the emptiness, composed of cosmic dust and energy. They include mirrored galaxies that are wise and old, but full of untold strength. As the thing moved, raising its enormous head, Jack's breath seized in his throat. The deep rumble that, more than simply a roar, the sound of the universe, the echoes of long-dead stars, came from its breast. The soldier briefly believed that he was being drawn into the boundless depths of the lion's gaze as it remained locked on Jack. Space itself, but Jack didn't flinch. Despite his racing heart, he held his stance. With unwavering determination, he gently lifted his palm. His universal translator was now open in a peace gesture, beeping quietly. Jack continued steadily, despite the stress in his voice. "I'm not here to harm you. I came because I don't believe the horrors I've heard," and the atmosphere was tangible. "Recognize you." The lion's eyes narrowed, and its massive body shifted slightly as if thinking. For a while, Jack was so terrified that he believed the thing may. Instead of attacking, the lion made a noise that could only be described as a sigh, a profound cosmic breath that sent energy ripples through the cavern, and the voice responded, "You are not afraid," as the translator beeped once again. Its rich, resonant tone suggested that the stars themselves were explaining why. Jack's eyes widened when the monster responded. He had anticipated a response, maybe even violence, but he swallowed this non-communication while maintaining his voice. He said, "I've seen enough fear in this. Calm dread doesn't lead to insight." The lion gazed at him for a moment, "And I wanted to know more than simply what you are, galaxy." Like forever, then gradually rose to its maximum height, looming above Jack like a mountain of cosmic energy, and for the first time, its eyes seemed to soften. Jack was curious in something he had never seen before, and as he approached a person, the lion remarked, voice a loud murmur that reverberated deep throughout Jack's soul. "Let's check to see whether you are worthy." So Jack Ryland, the human soldier, came forward in spite of all odds. Nearer than anybody has ever ventured to the cosmic lion beast, what transpired next would rock the basic underpinnings of the galaxy. Jack inhaled deeply as he walked forward with the moment's weight bearing down on him like the gravity of a star with which he had fought many wars. Despite all the odds against him, nothing had prepared him for this position in front of something that was more cosmic force than flesh and blood, more legend than life. His hand stayed firm as he reached for the black hole eyes of the cosmic lion, despite his racing heart. Observed him carefully as the M's throbbing nebula swirled with. Jack had a tingling feeling that was caused by the static charge in the air. The thing didn't move its body, sending shivers down his spine as if the world itself was holding its breath. As Jack's fingers approached the enormous paws, its celestial fur shimmered in the cavern's half-light. The lion lowered its head, bringing the person closer to its massive snout. Jack, a soldier, briefly believed he could see the cosmos mirrored in the lion's eyes, stars becoming galaxies. It was the sluggish, unavoidable march of time itself, whirling in the horizon. Was frightening and motivating all at once, and he struggled to maintain his attention. Being aware that any hesitancy or fear may break this fragile bond as Jack's hand formed. A burst of heat shot through his arm as he made touch with the creature's fur. The lion's mane felt soft, yet there was the force under the surface is indisputable, like feeling a star before it goes. Supernova, the creature's growling rumble became louder, yet it wasn't dangerous. The translator heard the lion's voice growl, its tone low and firm. "You are a brave human. Few people dare approach me this closely, and even fewer do." Jack managed to swallow hard, his heart still pounding, but he grinned. "A little, since I've never been good at listening to warnings." The lion's eyes moved. "You look for anything that looks like amusement flashing in the depths of its dark eyes. Do you know who I am?" "I know what they say, Jack." "You understand me," the lion continued. "You're a cosmic force and a being born from the stars," he said steadily. The lion examined him for a while, "But I don't think that's the full story. They label you a beast and a threat to the galaxy. You are correct not to believe them if you take a time to consider its enormous proportions and the shadows it created dancing over the cavern walls. I am more than what they say. I'm ancient, older than the planets," the lion said. "As you can see, I have traveled the stars and seen the growth and collapse of civilizations. Jack experienced the cold since before your people learned to walk." Although he was aware of the lion's might, hearing it talk about eons like even if these were just fleeting moments, he couldn't help but feel insignificant. Inconsequential in the company of something so timeless. "Then why are you here?" Jack inquired. His insatiable curiosity is what motivates him to remain incognito on this moon. The snarl of galaxy the lion intensified, creating a sound like the distant thunder thundering over the stars. "I've seen the galaxy and the effects of power on people who want it. They would attempt to use me to bend. I am free to do as they choose, but they simply regard me as a weapon and a tool to be used. And I refuse to be constrained by the aspirations of those who want to rule over the—" Jack Stars nodded slowly, seeing now the terror that had encircled the line for so long was about controlling the galaxy, not simply about its power. Feared what it was unable to control, and the lion, with its great strength and free spirit, was a representation of. Jack acknowledged that dawning is a protector and that you are not a danger. You preserve the equilibrium, and the lion's eyes dimmed the pulsating brightness of its master. With a softer touch, you comprehend more than most people, yet you still need to discover that, in spite of its height, it stepped back and moved smoothly. However, the powers of fear and greed will not let me live in peace in the galaxy. They will now come for you for having the audacity to contact me if you come for me." Jack's heart was thumping in his chest. "Are you ready for what it means?" He was aware that the lion was telling the truth, and news of his was already getting out. And the galaxy's powers would soon shift their attention to Theos, but Jack had never been one to. The lion nodded as he replied firmly, "I'm ready to back down from a challenge. I won't let them cage you. When the cosmic man swirls with newly discovered energy, we humans stand together, yet. Get ready for the galaxy's impending arrival, because the struggle ahead will put you to the test in ways you have never experienced before." News of Jack's quest had already been announced, and the days that followed his initial contact with the lion went by quickly. Started to proliferate across the galaxy, attracting notice from somewhere that neither Jack nor the lion greeted the human soldier's whispers that he had ventured to confront the cosmic lion and the connection that developed between. They spread like wildfire over star systems, and some people saw it as a sign or a miracle of new hope amid a war-torn and mistrustful cosmos. Some see it as a danger. Jack spent more time with the lion, whom he now named Orion, and that needed to be neutralized. As their relationship grew, he discovered more about the creature's past and its travels across the galaxy and its many interactions with other species, some of which were peaceful and others that weren't, but throughout it all, Orion had not been subdued by the troops attempting to seize. Jack reciprocated by sharing tales of humanity's hardships and conflicts. He mentioned the stars they had attained and the one that was still beyond their aspirations. The Orion listened carefully, taking in every word with its aged eyes. One night, Orion stated, "You see a lot," with a deep rumble in its voice as the two of. They were perched on a rock with a view of Theos' frozen landscape. "Although you are often deluded by your own goals and power, your type has promise." Jack nodded, his breath hazing in. "Control, greed, these things lead you down dark paths. Every animal in the frigid air is after something, not just humans." The most of the time, Orion's man flickered with gentle. "Perhaps the nebula is slowly whirling off starlight, yet there are those like. For those of you who are looking for anything more than power, I've decided to put their faith in you, Jack Ryland, because you see beyond what others." I've seen enough of Jack's somber demeanor as he turns to face Orion. Death and devastation to understand that pursuing power only results in ruin, but if we band together, perhaps we might alter that and demonstrate to the galaxy that there is an alternative. When a deep, resonant light appeared to fill the air around the lion's eyes, we knew we had to be prepared. Because the galaxy will attack us, and we need to be prepared to confront them, and Jack quickly realized that the Galactic Federation's hunters would arrive. Word of Orion's presence and Jack's relationship with the beast had gotten out of hand, so it would not be long until they arrived at Theos to seek the cosmic lion's strength for. Jack and Orion were more than just soldier and beast, yet they weren't scared of themselves. They were suddenly comrades and partners in a battle that was only getting started. Would resist whatever came next, and the galaxy wouldn't be prepared for what they had when it got there. Jack gazed out at the scene as the chilly winds of Theo blew over it. Knowing that everything was about to change, he embraced the stars for the first time in his life. News of Jack Ryland's extraordinary relationship with Orion the Galactic Lion spread. The legend of the Untouchables spread like wildfire across the galaxy. Once regarded as a destructive force, cosmic beasts were now intertwined with A. After doing the unimaginable, a human soldier made contact and established trust and lived, and some people saw Jack as a hero. Example of what was possible when bravery overcame fear, even if he was seen as a danger by others. A careless idiot who had just given humanity a weapon too strong to dominate the Galactic Federation was ready to took advantage of their newfound connection and messaged Theos to ask Jack to come back to their central. Jack, however, was aware that he had personally seen what the Federation did with. They want power, not peace or understanding, but control. Jack continued to ignore their calls while knowing that doing so would create A. 3 weeks after the first collision, he was right to target his back. Jack's sensors detected approaching ships with Orion without any formal marks, yet it was obvious that they were mercenaries and bounty hunters, employed by those who wanted to destroy the galaxy or seize Orion. Jack saw that greed had been aroused and that the line may no longer be out of reach. Orion Jack commented they would stop at nothing when examining the radar feed from. The lion was lying next to his ship, still and serene as before, but Jack was aware of the I count 6 ships heavily, and the beast realized the threat they were approaching. Armed, they will attempt to imprison you if they land, or worse, the lion will rise. Like it gently stood up, its man's radiance became brighter, like if the stars within. In reaction to the danger, it became brighter, allowing Jack Ryland Orion to arrive. Snarled, causing the air around them to tremble with the deep resonance of its voice. Discover what it means to oppose the stars themselves. Jack's hold on the console. He had engaged in more combat than he could remember, but this time, Orion was more than a creature to him, and now their relationship went beyond the battlefield. Jack wasn't. He was protecting a comrade, not simply a species, and he wouldn't allow these hunters to take Orion without a. He put on his combat gear, slung his plasma gun to his back, and turned on the ship's defenses. Jack left the Voyager and joined Orion aboard the hunting spacecraft as they closed in, shields. The moon's frigid winds howled over Theos' ice surface, surrounding them, but Jack's attention was razor-sharp, the bounty hunters first. Ships landed with a hiss, the sleek black vehicle opening its door and slicing through the air like a blade. Stepped for 9CCE, an infamous hunter known for catching the most hazardous animals in the galaxy, are being sold to the highest bidder, ugh. Greatest bidder, his armor shone in the gloom and his ruthless smile provided Jack with all the information he needed, and Sergeant Ryland Van Clyde called out his. He walked towards them with a mocking tone in his voice. You've established a reputation as the tamed human. The untamed, but as you are aware, the beast cannot be kept in the galaxy. I'll make sure you get a large portion of the income, but isn't it safe to operate something like this for free? As he moved in front of Orion Orns, not a friend, Jack remained steadfast, his gaze icy. Beast, and he is definitely not for sale. If you want him, you will have to go through me, Van laughed darkly. Even if you live through this, the Federation will still arrive, so you can guard it. Everyone will want a piece of this empire, so you can't keep them all at bay. Ryland, be wise and go while you. Jack still shook his head, saying, I didn't come here to walk. Van sighed and lifted his arm to indicate the ship's doors to the others. The chilly air hummed with the sound of highly armed mercenaries pouring out their firearms, trained on Jack and Orion. Jack felt the strain and the heat from the plasma weapons aimed at him, but he refused to back down. Orion uttered a low. Jack stopped the beast with a raised palm as it growled, its mane throbbing with electricity. They have to play this cleverly instead of assaulting right away if Orion unleashed full strength. It might quickly destroy the hunters, but that would just attract additional adversaries. Stand down, CL Jack. You had to outsmart the mercenaries rather than just overwhelm them. The bounty hunter's smile grew, but he cautioned that this need not end in bloodshed. However, I believe it does, as the first shot was fired as soon as the chaos ensued as the plasma bolt exited Van's weapon, and Jack fled behind a ragged ice creation as streaks of lethal energy illuminated the air. With their shoes crunching on the snow, mercenaries advanced, shooting ceaselessly. Jack's pulse raced as they drew in, yet his head was at ease. He fired back, concentrating from behind the ice and using accurate rounds to take down two of the approaching hunters, while the others continued to arrive. Their numbers were overwhelming. They had prepared for this and were prepared to handle anything Theos hurled at them. Meanwhile, the cosmic energy in Orion's primary surged and it was no longer motionless. The lion sprang into action with a thunderous roar, its enormous body moving, leaping through the air and smashing down onto the mercenaries with more speed than any beast of that size should. Orion's paws struck the ice with such deadly force that the earth trembled. The mercenaries who had ventured too near were immediately sent reeling back across the battlefield, weapons clattering pointlessly on the ground after being flung off their feet. But Van Clyde Being unfazed, his hunters regrouped and sent focused energy blasts in the direction of. When the lion attempted to defeat it with just firepower, Orion roared once again, vibrating through the frozen caverns, causing the planet's core to tremble. The energy burst harmlessly redirected off the glistening lion's body and dispersed into the surrounding stardust. Orion battled with a grace and intensity that Jack had never seen before, and he watched in wonder. Since the lion was an unshakable force of nature, it was more than simply an animal. Living representation of the universe, yet Jack was aware that they could not continue indefinitely since the hunters were relentless, and if other ships came, they would be overwhelmed. We must put a stop to this, Jack said to himself, his thoughts racing as he searched for means to change the situation, but suddenly an inspiration struck Jack, who turned on his comm broadcast and sent it straight to Van Cly's. "You have no clue what you're up against, Ship Cly, but you believe you can handle Orion." Van Cly's answer was immediate, "Stand down or you'll all be wiped out." His voice, "Ryland, you don't frighten me with your icy haughtiness. We face worse dangers." Jack stated in a firm voice, "You're a fool compared to this overgrown cat. Orion's. He has a connection to the stars themselves that goes beyond mere physical strength. If you continue to push the universe's energy, something that none of us can control will be triggered." Control, it was a bluff of sorts, and Jack was unaware of Orion's skills, but he had seen enough to understand that the lion was not subject to the same laws as any other creature he had come across previously, and based on the abrupt pause in Van Cly's speech, the hunter wasn't prepared to test that notion, so Van Cly stopped shooting for a while. He squinted as he studied Jack and Orion from AC across the battleground. "Do you truly believe this device is capable of more than?" Van Cly questioned, his voice brimming with doubt. "Tear us apart." Jack stepped forward, maintaining eye contact with the bounty hunter. "I'm sure it can, and if you continue moving forward, we'll learn the hard way." The atmosphere was tense. Jack held his breath, waiting for the quiet to break like a thread. The bounty hunter's palm hesitated above his weapon, his eyes flashing, and Van made the choice. Van eventually let out a loud roar of irritation between Jack and the lion, lowering his. He said to his mercenaries, "We're done here for now," and his weapon fell back. Jack exhaled deeply as the mercenaries retreated to their ships despite their hesitation. The air was filled with the sound of motors as the bounty hunters lifted up and vanished into the. For the time being, the threat was gone, but Jack realized that the galaxy had seen Orion's might and that others would arrive, stronger, more determined. Jack looked to Orion, his chest still constricted from the adrenaline of the peril as the winds of Theos howled all around them. "We bought ourselves some time in the war, but they will return, and when they do, we will need." Orion's black hole eyes slowly shone in its primary nebula to prepare. "Jack Ryland, the stars have selected you both, and we shall be prepared." Jack nodded, a feeling of purpose descending over him as they faced whatever came. "We're battling for something much more significant than survival anymore, the liberation of a creature." It represented the essence of the cosmos, and Jack was certain that they would encounter anything the galaxy had to offer. Together, they had created a relationship via combat between man and beast, but now, in ways none of them could yet foresee, it would be put to the test. The hush that followed Van's. Even though the mercenaries had temporarily departed Jack knew their absence wouldn't last. The galaxy was well aware that the unruly cosmic lion was, having been moved and connected with a person, the consequences of that link, its strength. In addition to bounty hunters, Mysterious drew as whole groups vying for claims. For their own reasons, 3 days after the first skirmish, the Voyager's sensors detected fresh signals, but this time they weren't from a distant tiny military fleet. Jack stood in the chilly winds of Theos, gazing up at the sky where the greater force was approaching. His breath froze in the freezing air as the far-off outlines of approaching ships became bigger. However, he was aware of the Galactic Federation, which was headed by the vicious Admiral. When Theon came, Jack murmured to himself, "They're not going to negotiate." Narrowing, they desire Orion who will answer all of their questions, and behind him, the enormous shape of the. In the twilight, Orion's lion lay still, its coat of stardust gently shimmering. Long before the ships came, its old eyes, which contained the knowledge of ages, recognized the impending fight. They were serene yet. Being vigilant, the galaxy worries about things it cannot comprehend. Orion rumbled up to its maximum height, and out of fear, they try to exert control, and they won't let up until they. Jack's grip on his plasma weapon strengthened as he confronted the. Prior to fighting in their wars and seeing what they were prepared to give up for power, the Federation would not. Distinct, they were unconcerned with understanding or peace, all they saw was a. Jack said in a voice that they could not use today as a weapon to rule the galaxy. The initial wave of Federation is hard and determined, and we won't give up easily. With their engines screaming, fighters descended from the skies, unleashing a barrage of plasma bolts that flashed over the frozen landscape. The earth trembled as the terrain and Jack ran for protection behind a crest of jagged ice. The noises of war filled the air under the assault, but Orion didn't flinch with a loud groan. The cosmic guy flaming with rage, roared the lion sprung into action. Jack marveled at the intensity as Orion charged towards the Federation cruisers. The earth broke under its feet as the enormous figure moved more quickly than any creature of that size should have been able to. And the lion destabilized the warriors by sending shock waves across the air with a sweep of its tail. Jack started shooting, taking out the target as they crashed on the cold surface. Federation soldiers poured off their spacecraft, highly armed, and accompanied by ground forces who had landed in a second wave. Resolute, but they hadn't anticipated Orion's overwhelming strength, the lion swatted. With its claws cutting through steel like toys, armored vehicles. The sheer power of Orion's roars, which echoed throughout the paper, drove the troops who ventured near fleeing. Despite the pandemonium, the battlefield resembles the roar of the stars itself. With a keen intellect, Jack battled beside Orion, moving in unison with. Jack was there to provide cover whenever a soldier approached the beast, as if they had been training together for years. The lions flanked defeating adversaries with well-thought-out shoots. The Federation's approach was based on using overwhelming force, but they hadn't taken into account the human tie. And beast, Jack came to the realization that it wasn't simply. The lion was very dangerous because of Orion's physical prowess, but their bond went deeper than that. Something that enabled them to move in unison and anticipate one another's acts. Jack sensed the mental presence directing and empowering him. Ran was an old sentient entity that was more than simply an animal. They were unstoppable united, but the Federation wasn't finished yet. In the midst of the commotion, the enormous shape. Through the clouds, Admiral Theon's vessel sank, its enormous cannons pointed straight at Jack and Orion. The ship threw long shadows across the battlefield as it hovered above it like a horrible omen. Jack's heart fell as he realized what was about to happen. They're headed to the frozen plains. Jack whispered that his heart was racing, ready to strike us with all they had. Need to move, but the battleship unleashed a blinding bombardment before they could retreat. There was a burst of light from the ship's weapons, and then there was a loud explosion on the earth below Jack. He hit hard as the blast's power pushed him off his feet, causing him to crack and split and tumble backward. The air was heavy with smoke and debris, and for a brief while, his eyesight was swimming as he attempted to get his bearings. Orion Jack yelled, but all he could hear was the high-pitched ringing in his ears. As he looked for the lion through the smoke, he saw the dim glimmer of Orion's mane, the lion, and panic sprang in his breast. Was still standing despite the fact that its shape was obscured by shadows. Jack stumbled to rise up. He hurried towards the monster with trembling legs, and when he got near Orion, his heart tightened. The lion's cosmic fur was scarred by deep gashes from the detonation, and its breathing was difficult, and its eyes were less bright than before, yet in spite of the suffering. With its eyes set on the vessel, Orion stood tall and fierce. "They misjudged us up there." Orion snarled, but its voice was suddenly softer. "But Jack Ryland, I won't give in to them today." Jack tightened his hands in rage. Boiling over, he's gone too far and fought too hard to lose, so let's give them anything to remember. Jack went to the cruiser and activated it with fresh resolve. Thean Jack yelled as his comm system locked into the warship's frequency. "Furious, this is your final opportunity. Get down or we'll make you temporarily regret ever being here." There was a pause before Admiral Thean's icy, calculating voice could be heard. Ryland gave up, crackling over the communications. "You're outmatched." Jack's jaw had hardened. There was no possibility that the lion and I would let you survive. Refusal reverberated over the battlefield, and the two sides seemed to hold their breath for a brief minute before making a noise like two. Thunder in the distance, the warship's cannons fired up once again, prepared to give a last deadly blow, but an amazing event occurred before they could fire. Despite its injuries, Orion was standing on its hind legs, its mane flashing with the earth underneath it seemed to be pulsing with cosmic energy, and the air itself. Jack felt the lion shimmering about him, as if reality itself were warping. The Federation's atmospheric pressure changes like the calm before a storm. Soldiers who sensed a problem paused, their rifles faltering as they observed the lion, and then Orion unleashed its full might with a scream that seemed to shake the fabric of space, sending a wave of. The lion released energy, but it was not a physical force. Rather, it was something far deeper than the stars in Orion's man. Flared more intensely, their light radiating outward in a wave-like explosion. Flowed over the battlefield, sweeping the Federation troops, tanks, and even Jack himself, but the energy brought something else that Jack understood instead of destruction. Suddenly, he was overcome by feelings and recollections that weren't his own. Orion's view of the infinity of time, the emergence and decline of civilizations, the equilibrium of the universe itself. He now saw why the lion had been concealed for so long, why Orion wouldn't be subdued. Just a creature, it served as a defender and guardian of the balance between. The Federation warriors now sensed life in the cosmos. Additionally, the soldiers' faces became pale with amazement as they dropped their rifles one by one. Even Admiral Thean, who had been so sure of his dominance, is afraid. As he took in what he had just seen, He paused, his battleship weapons shutting down as Orion's roar diminished. As the surge of energy passed, leaving a battlefield that was no longer a scene of bloodshed but rather revelation. Jack, gasping for air, turned to face Orion, but the lion remained still, standing despite the fact that its shape was shifting and its cosmic energy was dwindling. The struggle had taken its toll, but it had accomplished what no weapon could. It used a power beyond. "They will not forget this," Jack murmured softly, his voice full of no emotion. Orion said in a quiet but firm voice that they would not honor. Once again, Theon's voice crackled over the communications, but this time, there was simply terror, not conceit. Jack answered steadily, "What is this?" "It's what you can't control. If you..." For a long period, there was stillness, and then Theon sighed reluctantly. "Keep pushing, and it will be your doom," issued the command, and Jack watched as the Federation spacecraft started to move away from Theos. The sound of engines faded into the sky as the cruiser vanished into the clouds. Orion, the galaxy would never be the same even when the fight was done. Lying on the frigid ground, weak but unbroken, breathing steadily and slowly. "You did it," Jack said, kneeling down to the lion and putting a hand on its glittering man. Orion growled, "But you halted them for the time being." Jack nodded, understanding that the Federation wouldn't give up so quickly, as the lion had said. And others, opportunistic hunters, power-hungry groups would shortly follow. But Jack was also aware that the galaxy had seen Orion's actual power, and their motivation was no longer only fear, it was respect. "They'll come," Jack remarked in a tone of calm resolve, "but we'll be prepared, and the next time they attempt to enclose you, they'll reconsider." Orion's eyes quietly lit up as they met Jax's. "Jack Ryland, you have shown that we have a solid relationship, and we will tackle whatever happens." The stars above Theos. Jack started to re-emerge in the sky. Felt a peculiar calm that the galaxy would keep spinning, full of its difficulties and disputes, but he and Orion had evolved into more symbolic of disobedience to liberty and the equilibrium between authority and comprehension, and they would confront whatever was ahead as fellow humans. The lion was bound by a link that was impossible for any power in the cosmos to. News of Jack Ree and the Galactic Lion's conflict on Theos quickly spread. Travels around the galaxy across all regions of the universe, from crowded spaceports to remote outposts. After the narrative was repeated, Jack was shown to be more than simply a soldier. Legend's relationship with Orion had come to represent resistance to the strong powers attempting to exert authority. The unknown, but myths have repercussions, and the galaxy was. Admiral Theon's retreat had dealt a blow to the Federation's pride in getting ready for a reckoning, and now they were reassembling the Council after being satisfied with allowing the Galactic Lion story to simply because a myth was now preparing a reaction that they couldn't afford to let. Something that strong is still beyond their control, and more significantly, Jack and Orion had fled into the deepest cavern in the world because they couldn't allow Jack Ryland to remain a symbol of rebellion. The lion had used up all of his cosmic energy to recuperate from the fight, and Jack could see how it had affected the once bright guy who was his buddy. Orion was dark, and the animals moved more slowly and deliberately. "How are you doing, Big?" Jack, who was kneeling next to Orion and putting a hand on the. Orion growled faintly, but Jack could hear it. "Lion's cosmic fur, I have suffered more." Hear the weariness in his voice, yet the equilibrium has been thrown off. When the Federation returns, they won't stop until they get what they need." Jack nodded. He had anticipated this since they vanquished Theon. Had made it apparent that they had just postponed the return of the Federation, and they would bring everything they had, and then we'll be prepared, Jack said firmly. "We cannot battle them indefinitely, Jack. There are forces." Orion's bright eyes met his. "We have a close link in this galaxy that even I can't contain for very long, yet Jack was pacing the cavern, thinking that the price of disobeying them could be more than what we are willing to pay. He had never given up in a battle, but this time was different since the Federation wasn't only an empire has the means and personnel to overwhelm another adversary. Even the Galaxy Lion, and Orion was correct, as much as Jack hated to acknowledge it, that they couldn't keep. Jack whispered, "There must be another way to fight forever," as he ran his fingers through his. "There must be a way to stop this," he thought as he gazed at the cold cavern walls. Like a glimmer of hope amid the dark, the answer came to him without transforming the galaxy into a war. It was dangerous, and there was no assurance that it would succeed, but it was their only. "We make them see," Jack murmured, turning back to Orion with a determined expression. "Silently, we demonstrate to the galaxy that you are a defender and a guardian, not a weapon to be feared. The balance, maybe we can halt if the galaxy recognizes that." Before the conflict began, Orion cocked its enormous head. Taking into account what Jack said, you would stake everything on the hope that they would pay attention and decide to choose peace over. Jack clenched his teeth, saying, "If we don't, the galaxy will burn, and they'll come for. This isn't just about us anymore, it's for everyone, so you and then for each other." Try the Lion was quiet for a while, its man's light flickering. "Jack Ryland, we'll do it." It nodded slowly, like far-off stars. "As you say, but be aware that if they want to go to war and do not listen, we will." Jack nodded despite his heart thumping in his chest as they stood against one another. The Galactic Council convened on Nebula Prime, a planet of shining spires in the center of the Federation. With whirling clouds, it was a location where alliances were formed, authority was challenged, and choices that influenced the galaxy's destiny were made, and now the eyes of everyone in the galaxy was staring in the council room, where Orion and Jack Ryland had been summoned to give their. Jack was standing in the middle of the great hall, illuminated by faraway stars. The council members sat in a circle around him, throwing shadows on the smooth floor. Circular arrangement, each with their faces concealed by ornate robes and masks. Standing in for a separate Federation party behind Jack's enormous size. Ion's man was standing tall and shining brilliantly once again through the creatures. Even though this was a creature of cosmic power rather than a beast, its stance was serene and majestic. And Admiral Thalian's icy gaze was felt by everyone in the room. Fixed on Jack, but the cockiness he had previously exuded had given way to a dread he understood what Orion. Having seen it, Sergeant Ryland started Council Zarya A. Senior officer whose tone was as frigid as the surrounding air, "You and this. The monster is now standing before us, pleading for mercy after defying the Federation and endangering the balance of power." Jack straightened his eyes and looked across the room. "I'm not here to ask for mercy," he said. "I'm not requesting surrender," he stated in a firm but determined voice. "Orion isn't a weapon, he shouldn't be imprisoned, and I'm come to halt a conflict. Controlled, he is the galaxy's protector, he keeps the equilibrium, and if you maintain The room was humming with whispers, but if you press for control, you'll damage the exact thing he's here to preserve. In order to hush them, Counselor Zara held out a hand. You say that this monster is a protector, yet documents from the Federation only reveal anarchy and devastation in it. Jack took a long breath and asked himself, how can we trust your word? I was ready for this because I've seen what occurs when we want power. I have participated in your wars and seen the annihilation of whole planets for the sake of power. Additionally, Orion isn't come to destroy, rather, he's here to shield us from ourselves, and if you continue to act as if he is a danger, then... Zarya narrowed her eyes and leaned closer, saying, you'll make him one. What would you want us to do? Sergeant, watch what occurs when this thing roams the galaxy uncontrolled. Jack clenched his hands in frustration as the next group decided it wanted to utilize Orion for its own ends. The significance of the moment you declare him an ally, you understand that. His authority is intended for balance, not conquest, if we can cooperate, if we realize that we can prevent a conflict that will destroy the galaxy. Jack's comments lingered in the air like the calm before a storm as the room grew quiet. Storm, it seemed for a brief period that no one would respond to his request. Deaf ears, but as Orion moved closer, the sound of the lion's voice filled the room. I have watched this for ages, and it is so deep and resonant that it seems like the stars themselves are communicating. Galaxy, I've seen both its splendor and its darkness, but I'm not here to conquer. I'm here to protect, but I'm aware that I won't let the equilibrium be shattered. If you try to manipulate me, you'll only discover destruction. The council members moved about in their chairs, obviously uncomfortable even. Counselor Zarya glanced from Jack to Admiral the Lion, who seemed surprised by the enormous strength in Orion's voice. Orion's look was inscrutable, and what would happen if we decided on peace? Orion's eyes then began to shine gently, and I promised to be your friend and defend the balance, as I always have, and working together, we can make sure that the galaxy doesn't descend into anarchy for an extended period of stress. There was silence in the room until Counselor Zarya cautiously approached her. This council will deliberate, she continued in a calm voice, although if we discover that your statements are untrue and that this monster is just as deadly as we are, we will know this, Sergeant Ryland. Jack nodded, fearing that you two would be held responsible. Weight off his shoulders, although it wasn't a win just yet, it was a beginning. Kunil had heard, and as he turned to go, the galaxy's destiny now depended on their choice. Chamber with Orion by his side, Jack gave himself a little grin since they had succeeded. They had enabled the galaxy to view the stars extending in all directions beyond the council room. Jack was aware that the journey ahead would be lengthy and full of difficulties and perils that they were unable to foresee at the time, but for the first time in his life, he felt a feeling of optimism that, together, they could alter the course of events. Orion rumbled quietly next to him. The galaxy is observing Jack Ryland as the cosmic man shimmers in the light of far-off stars. But now that we've revealed the truth to them, we'll wait. Jack gazed up at the sky. Heart full with resolve, we confront whatever comes next together, and with that the lion and the soldier entered the future prepared to defend the galaxy against whatever dangers may arise.